and welcome to Sin and Steel, the heavy metal podcast. I'm your host, Sarah-Tonin, and in this episode, we're looking at what's new in metal. We're talking heavy metal news, new releases, and whatever I've been up to for the previous month, as well as being joined for a chat with Nat, Sam, and Luke of the Incantus to have a look at their new album. So let's talk all things April. To start us off, Chris Steele, Chuck Schuldner's nephew, put one of Chuck's guitars, a custom emerald green BC Rich Stealth, up for auction, stating that there were some extenuating circumstances leading to the sale. A number of commenters suggested that they would happily contribute to a GoFundMe if needed, rather than him having to part ways with the guitar, but in the end, it sold for $31,300 US. Someone else looking to offload some equipment is Kiko Loureiro, who has teamed up with Reverb to sell a bunch of gear, including a number of items linked to his time in Megadeth. Items up for sale include a bunch of guitars, amps, pedals, all the usual stuff, as well as things like used sweatbands, shirts, shoes, and some jiu-jitsu gear that has sold for over $550 US. Some major news this month was the fire at Neseblod Records, formerly Helvete record store in Norway. The store was originally owned by Euronymous and was shut down in 1993 after drawing a lot of negative attention from police because of the activities of the black metal inner circle. When it eventually reopened, it was Neseblod Records, and while it is still a record store, it also has kind of a museum aspect to it, where they share and display a bunch of items that are linked to the heavy metal history, including things like tape trading letters from the early days of black metal. A fire tore through the shop and the basement, destroying a few punk, rock and metal artifacts, but we have been assured that the iconic black metal graffiti was untouched, and the store has since reopened. I saw some people talking about this online, and they told the owners don't throw anything away because black metal fans will absolutely eat up the fire damaged goods from their store, and I really think they're onto something there. Ghost shared a video out across social media earlier in April that teased the end of Papa Emeritus 4 along with a movie release, which of course makes sense because Tobias had mentioned in interviews that a new album was in the works, and it's tradition that the Papa persona has a new incarnation with each album. And when they played in Australia last year, specifically for Brisbane, he said that would be his last time on stage. And if you remember, there was some drama last year with like loads of clickbait headlines talking about Ghost banning phones at their shows, which ended up really just being that they were banning them from a couple of specific shows because they were filmed for the movie. It has since been announced that it is called Right Here, Right Now, and it will be airing for 2 nights in June. And yes, I've already bought tickets, even though apparently it wasn't meant to be up for even pre-sale for another week, but it's up, so tickets bought. Now cue the obligatory "Ghost aren't metal" comments, and then anyone who even thought about doing so can go sit in the corner with Glenn Benton, because Glenn has been going on a few tirades of late that are really only showing him in a bad light. For anyone who's not across it, amongst some generalized kind of angry comments about not giving a fuck about anyone else's opinions, especially where he's been questioned by reporters about the use of AI for the new Deicide cover, he's also made it clear that he's not impressed by the current state of heavy metal and all the posers. He said, all we have is... I'm really tempted to just make a really dumb, whiny teenage voice here, but I won't do it justice for how fucking dumb it is. He said, all we have is a bunch of wannabe, Weezer-looking dudes trying to play metal. Everybody's sporting black frame glasses and wearing trucker caps. Nobody gives a shit about imagery anymore, looking the part of metal and all that. And then he went on a bit of a tirade about how he dresses the part and he's always dressed the part. Well, fuck, Glenn. You know some people need glasses to see, right? And those are some really big words for someone in his position that used AI instead of real art on their new album cover. Besides, like a week beforehand, he was quoting Willie Nelson in an interview. And I mean no hate on Willie Nelson, but if you're so caught up on being 100% metal, then it just seems a little bit contradictory. Anyway, I get that things were different when metal was first kicking off, and people within like kind of his age group might feel a little precious and protective of what they sometimes had to literally fight for. But like, I totally get that. But even if you don't like all the directions that metal has gone in, can't you at least be a little bit proud of how far it's come and the diversity that we now have within the genre? This is something I've talked about before on the podcast, but it's just that whole like posers attitude is so outdated. If we want the music to continue, if we want the bands we love to be supported, we need people to listen to them. We need people to buy their merch and go to their shows. And if you make people unwelcome because they don't fit your aesthetic of what metal should look like, then the bands won't survive. They can't be exclusive to only a small group of like 10 dudes who might like them, but still be successful at the same time. It's just not how things work. Blaine on Banger TV recently did a review of the new Deicide album, and I really recommend that everyone go check it out because it was brutal as fuck and so funny. Even if you like the new album, even if you like Glenn Benton, the way that Blaine approaches it is just so fucking funny. I think that a lot of you will get a kick out of it. Speaking of people going on tirades though, Summer Slaughter Festival announced this year's lineup and it had a fairly negative response online. There are some general complaints that it didn't have enough death metal, which is something that's always been a staple of the festival. And Metal Sucks wrote an article where they didn't rag on any of the artists that were playing, but they did point out that it seemed a bit strange that they didn't have the same caliber of artists that they've had previously, and it seemed like it was going in a bit of a different direction. You know, it was kind of more deathcore than death metal. Well, Summer Slaughter from their official page cracked these shits and had an absolute tanty, responding on Instagram, "Regardless if we booked Cannibal or Fetus, or resurrected necrophagist or cynic, you're still a bunch of pro-vaccine mandate, brainwashed, farmer-cuck sheep bootlickers. Have a good day and bow to your publicly traded owners, posers." Their comments have since been removed, but included a mention of another major event happening that Summer Slaughter claimed meant they couldn't have the bands that they wanted. And while it seemed like it was a way of them trying to defend their current lineup, if I was a band on that bill, I'd be reading between the lines on that one. In Oz, we're having our own festival drama with Pandemonium Festival. And here is where we can insert the now very overused joke about the festival living up to its name. But it had multiple bands pull out of the show last minute, including Deep Purple, Placebo, Dead Kennedys, and more, while the promoter tried to keep things quiet. After rumours were reported through Channel 9, people started asking questions, and the promoter, Andrew McManus, who's been flagged by reporters for his kind of flaky events and lack of refunds in the past, was clapping back to people on Instagram who were really only asking for an honest update. One user who commented on an Alice Cooper post stating that there had been no mention of refunds, even with half the headliners removed, had Andrew McManus go to his personal page and start ranting, telling him, "Anywhere, anytime, bud." It got weirder though when Pandemonium wouldn't provide a direct update, but eventually they had an announcement made through Alice Cooper and Blondie, stating that the lineup changes had meant it would be reduced to a one-stage event and require some venue changes in some states and things like that. But it was like they were trying to soften the blow or redirect any blame by having the announcement come from the artists instead of the promoters themselves. They continued to promote the event based on its original lineup, including through some major ads running during some big sporting events and stuff like that. And they took their time in updating their website or their ticketing sites to reflect the changes. Eventually, they told people who bought the tickets that they could choose between a free ticket, a partial refund, or a free hoodie. But there have been people that have said they haven't received, or they never received, the contact that was promised regarding what the process was. And for those that did, things really only got worse because there was a massive data breach. Basically, they used Google Forms to collect the information, all the bank details, contact details, but they left the fucking admin tab unlocked so anyone could go in and open it. Eventually they fixed it, but there was something like 400 and something people's details that were just open for anyone to see. So anyway, the events went ahead, which was to the surprise of some, but it was pretty funny watching it all unfold, at least from the outside as someone who didn't buy a ticket. VIPs were given the most horrid looking gourmet pizza
God damn, Jimmy. This some serious gourmet shit.
And where they were promised raised platforms, they instead got rubber mats on the ground. While at some venues, you could get a better view from the footpath outside the fences. What wasn't funny was seeing the accessibility areas. I'll admit that I probably haven't paid enough attention at other gigs to really know what is standard, but I'm sure I've seen a few at festivals where they've had like raised platforms in spots where people can see stuff. It has proper access so that wheelchairs aren't in the mud and shit like that. But what we saw at this was basically some fenced in pens in the grass and dirt. And it was generally in areas that were sitting right behind the crowd. So anyone that was like in wheelchairs, all they'd be seeing is the backs of the crowd. It's just all sorts of fucked up, and it looks like nothing but segregation. I think that's something I'd really like to look into and understand a little bit more about. Like, do we have legal requirements to provide these types of access, and are there standards that apply? If not, then, you know, obviously we should. If we do, but they're not being followed, then how do we fix that? How do we improve that? I mean, I don't know. If there's anyone who knows much about that stuff, hit me up. But either way, I think I'm going to look into that. In terms of other nonsense with this festival, I've seen a lot of people saying that the negative spin needs to stop because it's reporting like that, which will be the end of festivals in Oz. But I call bullshit on that. Festivals are having struggles all over the world right now, and Australia has always had its own challenges to add to that. If we let promoters take advantage of that and get away with over-promising, under-delivering, that will be the end of festivals for us. And part of the issues around this particular event was that they weren't forthcoming with the information about the changes, and were continuing to promote and sell tickets with context that no longer applied. And that's just completely unethical. The question that stands now is, have the bands, have the vendors, have the workers all been paid? Have those who wanted refunds been given them? And it sounds like the answer right now is no. Reporter Joel King has shared a screenshot someone sent him asking Wolfmother if they've been paid yet. And at the time of writing this, the answer was no. I hope that despite everything, everyone still gets paid, but we will see, time will tell. Watch this space. To finish up our heavy metal news on a positive note, some of Lemmy's ashes were previously put into bullets and shared out to some of his close friends, including Rob Halford, Dora Pesch, Dave Grohl and James Hetfield. And in April, James shared that he had a new tribute tattooed, an iron cross with a spade in the centre on his middle finger, and it was done with ink that had a pinch of Lemmy's ashes mixed in, which is pretty fucking cool. What have I been up to? What has been giving Serotonin some serotonin? Well, first up, I skipped the March episode just due to life and general business because I started a new job, and as happens when you're learning the ropes, I've been a bit brain dead at the end of the day. So I thought I'd wait until things had settled down a little before I jumped into the new episodes. Which means I didn't get a chance to chat about all the gigs that I had through March, which is unfortunate because it was a gig-heavy month. I won't go through all the details, but I saw Mr. Bungle and the Melvins at Festival Hall, Sanguizgabog with Disentomb at Max Watts, The Who with the Omnific at the Croxton Band Room, The Dead South at the Forum, and I snuck across to see Alice Remains, an Alice in Chains tribute band, over at the Bendigo Hotel during its closing weekend. This month was a little quieter for gigs, but I still had a couple. I went and saw Amigo the Devil at the Pally Bar in Frankston, where he was supported by the Blackwater Fever from Queensland. And for those who are unfamiliar,
I'm a goddamn mess for you to clean up, but I like it. And your dream turned into a nightmare when I crawled inside it.
Amigo the Devil is alternative or dark folk, also known as murder folk. His music generally deals with some pretty heavy topics and explores kind of the darker side of humanity, and it's that perfect balance of fucked up beauty. So Qantas broke Danny's banjo while he was flying across to Melbourne for the last leg of his Australian tour, and this is pretty in line with Qantas and their baggage handling. I flew with them to Sydney only a week beforehand and saw one of their crew just like napping on the conveyor during load-in. It meant that he didn't have his gear for all our shows, and that created a range of issues which were only exacerbated during the performance when tuning would go out within moments or cables would stop working and just completely cut out. But he just rolled with the punches, playing some songs that would normally be on banjo instead on guitar, playing the unconnected banjo up to the mic, or just straight up vocalizing the music instead, which he was kind of doing anyway to cover the parts that would normally be in recording. But it was really endearing, entertaining, and it just made for a really special kind of show. And this was a first for me, but I found myself crying during Garden of Leaving. I was already kind of emotionally primed by the Blackwater Fever. They sung a song that I can't remember the name of, but it was about an old couple that they met in their travels. So when this one came up, and knowing that it was at least in part from his own experience, my chest just tightened and I just couldn't stop the tears from coming. Despite my teary, this was overall an incredible show, and I'm just so stoked that I got to experience it. The other gig for the month was all locals down at the Evelyn Hotel, where I went to see Eon's Abyss, who was supported by Tiger Driver, Thallium, The Pass, and Born of a Bastard King. It was the Bastards' first live gig together, and they did a stellar job. The Pass absolutely killed it, and Alana's voice is just so fucking good for what they're doing. She also runs Cut Off Your Hands jewelry and makes some really cool pieces, so go and check them out and her out. Thallium are a bunch of youngsters that are absolutely kicking ass, so I'm really pumped to see them more and see where they go. And Tiger Driver, look, without being too harsh, I was a little bit put off by their aesthetic choices initially. It reminded me a little bit of seeing Powerwolf's early shows. Where they have a vision, they clearly have a vision, but the money and the craft to achieve it just wasn't quite there yet. And so it all kind of looked a little bit cheesy and awkward. But once they got there, it fucking worked. And it's clearly doing things for them these days. So maybe Tiger Driver is kind of doing the same, and it's their initial concepts, and over time they'll refine their stage props and their makeup and get the look that they're trying to achieve. Although with a name based on a wrestling move, maybe that hint of cheese is actually intentional. I don't know. Either way, I mean them no offense, because from a sound perspective, they're great. They had this like death metal with some black metal influences and even some doomy early Black Sabbath kind of stuff happening in some tracks. They were really good. Eon's Abyss, anyone who's been following along knows that I'm really keen on Eon's. They made my top 3 EPs in 2023 with Insidious Truth, but they don't always have a lot of gigs happening, so it was awesome to finally be able to go and see them live for the first time. They were fantastic. They've got some really good stage presence happening up there, and Lee on bass had this stupid grin across his face the entire time, which was a little bit infectious, but I'll be really looking forward to seeing them again for sure. And while I'm talking about Eon's Abyss, they released their video for Backyard Facelift earlier in the month. And guess what? Your girl makes an appearance. In the clip, Steve and Brett give you some wonderfully cheesy horror-inspired acting while fans make appearances throughout, and I'm one of them. I've included it in the appearances playlist on my YouTube page so you can jump across and check it out. Outside of that, I've joined Duolingo and have started trying to learn some Dutch, and to help with that I've been smashing some Dutch metal bands like Hardevolk. But please let me know if you have any recommendations for bands I can add to my Dutch metal playlist. Just keep in mind I want the ones speaking Dutch, not English. And my last full-length music and talk formatted podcast has now been shared on Spotify. So unless I decide to sneak any last-minute ones through in May, that's it. This is the new Sin and Steel. But make sure you go and check that episode out. It was looking at thrash metal and chatting with Andrew Hudson of Harlot, and it was a lot of fun to make. Now let's talk recent metal new releases. Obviously, I can't sit here and list them all because there are hundreds of releases each month, but I'll give you the ones that stood out to me. And any bands I mention here where available are included amongst others in the Sin and Steel new releases playlist, which you can find through the link tree in the podcast description or on social media bios. And I'll throw together a new releases playlist on YouTube too, because I really want to make it nice and easy for you to go across and take a listen. So look for the section titled Songs from the Episodes, and it'll be in there. We're going to start things off with some death metal. Necrocracy from Scotland released the album Predestiny. Witch Vomit from the US released the album Funeral Sanctum. Necrot dropped Lifeless Blood. And Spit on Your Grave from Mexico released Arcana. Storm Upon the Masses from Belgium gave us their second full-length release, Crusher of Souls. And it's a bloody good title because that's exactly what it delivers. Crushing riffs with some nice grooves, lots of blast beat. Benighted from France dropped the album Ekbom, which is both eclectic and refined at the same time. Like, Death Grind on its own is a lot of fun, but then the blackened tones that sit behind this, they just add another layer of kind of like sensory assault that you really need sometimes, and this just tickles so many good parts of my brain. And for something a little more melodic, but just as fucking crushing, the Incantus from Australia released their first full-length self-titled album.
They could not save the fair line. Stay by side, the chosen line. My timbers right in the rock's embrace. The first embrace it is.
So joining us for this episode are the boys from the Incantus, a melodic death metal band from Melbourne, Australia. Apparently I can't fucking speak tonight. Lots of ums and ahs. It's a good start. But thank you for joining me, guys.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
So to make it nice and easy, what I might do is get you guys just, do that, go around the room, introduce yourself, let us know what you do in the band, and then maybe just give us an overview of what the Incantus is all about.
Okie dokie. I think one of you guys should start for a change, because it's typically me. Luke, you're the newest. Why don't you start?
Yeah. So I'm the very fresh meat in this band.
Nice.
Play bass. I've been jamming with you guys for a couple of months. We've had 2 shows, and yeah, loving it.
Awesome.
First show interstate, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was not bad. First show with these guys with an international support slot and interstate. So yeah,
awesome.
Straight into it.
Where were you supporting, or who were you supporting?
Angela's Puppetry.
Oh fuck yeah! I saw them in Melbourne.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, nice.
Sorry, Luke, I jumped in there. Yeah. The band was actually formed in Wagga originally, so it did say kind of a deal.
Yep.
Bit of a long story there how I joined the band, but yeah, I'm Sam. I linked up with Nat back in about, when was it, 2018 or 17? Might have been 2017. Back in Wagga. Yeah, possibly then. Actually met Nat at a party. Knew he was doing some guitar lessons. I was like, oh, fucking, how do I get to jam with this guy? So I teed up some guitar lessons off him, and then ended up jamming with him a bit further and write some music with him, and moved the band down here to Melbourne to get some other members and get it all happening. And then the good old 19 happened, and we all just slowed the fuck down. but yeah, guitarist and yeah, writing a bit of shit with Nat there.
Nice. So I guess that spins it all around to me. So yes, I am Nat. I'm the founder. Originally, it was a solo studio project with just me, and born out of a lot of, how would I put it, frustrations. Like I've been involved professionally in the industry since '99, but a lot of the projects I did were either session work or bands that, let's say, they weren't the most honest, and there was some janky kind of things that happened. So after a lot of trial and tribulation, living in Sydney, back and forth, like kind of stuff, I wanted to try and create something of my own. When I found Sam, that became something more than myself. It wasn't just crystallizing troubles, frustrations, trauma, and those sorts of things in songs. It started becoming bigger than yourself, which is what you really want a band to become. So yeah, here we are all these years later with this full cohort of brothers that are all very like-minded, and I'm sorry to get mushy. I'm grateful for all of you. No, I truly am.
Beautiful. No, that's beautiful. But so you were saying it started in Wagga.
Mm-hmm.
So was the move just purely to get more people involved? Was there no one around, or did you move for other reasons and then that just fell into place?
That's a good one. So it was to build the band further. My wife is a tattoo artist. It was actually for her work as well.
I may have been stalking all of her page on the weekend after you posted. Her
she
work
has
is
detected.
Mint.
She has detected.
No, incredible. I think I need to make a booking.
Yes. I should love to help you. But it was, there's plenty of people in Wagga, but since Wagga lost its, like, keep in mind, Wagga is much like the New South Wales version of, you might say, Bendigo or Ballarat or something like that.
Yeah,
it's 80,000 people. It's not small.
Yeah.
But we had one metal venue by the, I'm not going to say the end of it because things are going quite well now, but we had one metal venue that I was on the other side of the screen for a long time, despite working as a working musician. I fell into mainly promoting and stage managing and stuff.
Yeah. So
my first job was a roadie as a kid. The home was the metal venue, and funnily enough, the place was my wife. But anyway, when that place collapsed, that just gutted our entire community. There's a local band called Artifact. Some kids that I've known for quite a while. I love that even their band name references this idea, and it's all sort of bouncing back. We currently have a new venue. Myself and Chris from Hidden Intent teamed up to essentially get this venue to go, hey, take a look at us, to work with us, please.
Yeah.
So Wagga has a new metal venue, thankfully, but...
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So what's that called, by the way?
Tilly's.
Sorry?
Tilly's.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Tilly's. It's gone through many names over the years, but
yeah.
It's even... Here's the irony. The Incantus played its very first show at a place where, as a young kid, I was about 16, and when I did my first professional show, I was supporting the Screaming Jets. It was at the same that's under a different name, so it's
that's
kind
awesome.
of weird full circle.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Okay, so obviously you guys have just released your self-titled album, and it's a fucking ripper, by the way. What do you want to share in terms of, like, what can the listeners, the viewers, expect from it in terms of themes and sounds and stuff like that?
Okay. You want to jump in there?
I'm
too busy looking at D&D books in the background.
I just said Cluedo.
Nerd!
Massive.
It's actually D&D, Cluedo.
That's amazing.
Mad D&D, says Luke. So.
Nice. Come play sometime. If you ever want to come for a trip down the Bass Coast, down near Phillip Island, I'll host a game for you.
Awesome.
A bit of a theme, I guess, on the album there. One of the main slogans you probably see it in the album as you open it up, is that "Will forth from nothing." That's something I think on one of the first songs me and Nat were working on together when I linked up with Nat. It might have been Bridges, Nat.
Yeah,
And we got to the part at the end of it. We're writing some lyrics for it. And that last bit where it just breaks right down and it gets a bit mental.
Yep.
Well, what are we going to scream here? And I just thought to myself, "Will forth from nothing." And that just came from basically just clawing the fuck back from, the depths of, your rock bottoms basically in life where you get to and you got nothing to get from and just clawing back from nothing. So that's what I get a lot from this album and what I poured into it. We've all faced some shit times in our life, and what do you do with it? You claw back. So that's a bit of a theme of it. Just making something from nothing.
We've definitely all come back from. It's a melting pot of dark places.
Yep.
Trying to coalesce into something positive.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, so you've already, I guess, elaborated on this a little bit, because my next question was really going to be, were there any particular inspirations for the tracks? So Dark Times, was there anything more to elaborate on that, or just kind of general?
Each song tends to take on its own.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. If we were to go from the top with like horror, that actually started with Sam.
Yep.
And yeah, maybe Sam, you can go into the whole subtext thing of what that really took on for us. Like,
I mean that monologue at the start, the Marlon Brando from Apocalypse Now, just the horror, kind of took that out of the general context. I mean, the context of the movie's not really where I'm going with that.
Yep.
I tried to sort of take that in with their own personal horrors. You've got to, be if you're in hell for so long, you got to get comfortable in hell. Otherwise, it's always going to remain hell. And that's what I tried to get from it. Just becoming familiar and comfortable with hell, and living in it.
Yep.
It really became a subtext thing, didn't it? Like, to be honest, when that first was one of the first mixes that came back from Mike at EOL Studios in Richmond.
Yep.
Yeah, Dr. Mike Trebetskov. Gotta be honest, I kind of cried. It was pretty
fantastic.
The original,
it was a big moment.
That's really good.
The original tracking I did for that too was I legged it when COVID broke out. I legged it back up to Cora Rutherglen, and my mum's got a cabin here on the Murray River. And
we're all country folks.
Yep.
Yeah. I took on my computer and shit, and I was working from home at the time. So I was still working up there. I had a guitar, and I was like, oh, fuck it, while I'm up here, I'll just do my own little projecty sort of stuff. And that was just, and it sounded completely different to what that is. However, we still use the original dry stems that are recorded up there on the album.
Oh, okay.
So so that guitar that's on there is actually me in this little old cabin, just,
that's perfect.
playing that. It's and that's one of the things that the little attachment, the emotional attachment to on that track too. When I listen to it, it's always like it starts there in that little cabin. It's cool.
A lot more sitting behind the scenes on that. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything, Luke, or you and your beautiful amps behind you? Damn you!
No, I mean, to go back to the question of what people should expect from the album, I guess, like, sonically, it's really, to me, and it sounds like a love story to early 2000s melodic death metal. Like, it's just got that real crushing sort of guitar tone, and just driving sort of music that made me, like, I've been friends with Darcy for quite a long time. He mentioned, oh, my band needs a bass player. And I caught up with these guys, and they just said, I had to listen, and I was like, yep, that's for me. I need to be part of this. And then I got to know them, and I definitely need to be part of this. So, yeah.
It's funny, though, you mention like the early 2000s kind of melodic metal and melodic like death metal and things like that, because not comparing, not saying you sound exactly like them or anything like that, but one of like the earlier bands I would have been just able to start actually getting out to gigs was one of the guys I went to school with who was in, I think they were called Elysian. I think they really only went for a year or so. What?
A few years. All right,
I don't know.
Elysian. We apparently have a weak link. So a very dear friend of mine I went to high school with, he was year below me in school, is Tristan Tate. Tristan Tate has done artwork for multiple artists, Orpheus Omega, many different bands. Look him up, you'll know what I'm talking about. He literally moved from Wagga to Melbourne to play bass for Elysian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, well.
Nice.
Oh, well.
Well, it was, I think, Jordan, who was in there, he went to school with me. But I remember going to see them for the first time and was like, just absolutely fucking blown away. And I was like, these guys are
rad.
Incredible. And it's just the feeling of seeing that and that feeling of hearing them for the first time. I put on your album and that was what I thought of. And I felt like kind of that same feeling.
Sarah, you're gonna get it.
But so it's really funny you mentioned that because that gave me a bit of nostalgia to those sorts of days. And that was like I said, that would have been early days for me being able to get out. Like I would have been, if I was going to overage gigs, it was just barely. So
I'm beyond chuffed. That's all I can say.
But yeah, really invokes a really, really good feeling.
Awesome.
I absolutely agree. Yep. Definitely. I grew up loving older In Flames and all that sort of stuff, and it just gives you that same sort of. It's something about the sound of it all just takes you straight back to all that, while also just being. It's got its own sound to it.
Yep.
Like, yeah, really enjoying being part of it.
That's awesome. Now, did you want to jump into some plugs and letting everyone know whereabouts they can find you and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. We actually have our next show coming up with our very good mates in Voidfall. They're doing a debut album launch as well. And they've been together, technically, as long as the Incantus are around, they've been around, but they've done way more shows than us. 1st of June at the Leadbeater Hotel.
It may already be in my calendar.
Woo!
And because it was... Sorry,
mate, you good?
I was going to say, I did see, because Harlot are playing as well, aren't they?
Yes, which is awesome. Jake Weber's brother, Ben, who's in Deprivation, he's the vocalist. Up north, Orange. Yeah, good friend. That's really cool.
Awesome.
We have another one coming up, though, too, on the 29th of June. It hasn't been properly announced yet, so you'll be one of the first.
Ooh, fantastic.
Apologies, guys, if I'm mashing this, but Maruthian?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Who were, like, on the cover of Heavy Mag just the other day. Like, we are going to be supporting them.
Awesome.
The main two gigs we've got coming up, and then obviously all our stuff's available on all the main streaming platforms and Bandcamp and all that, the usual suspect places you can find music.
Awesome. I'll make sure as well. Sorry?
We'll have something special coming up for Halloween.
Oh, okay. That'll be good. We always like something metal and something spooky on Halloween.
Damn straight.
Of course, I will make sure that when I share this out on social media, I'll link everyone across.
Sorry, Sam appears to be pinching on his computer.
Yeah, he does have internet trouble sometimes.
That's okay.
He does.
Look, we'll wrap it up now anyway, but you guys have been great to talk to. I really appreciate your time. And like I said, let's have you back for a full-length episode once I get back into them and fix up the format and all of that.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks
for having us.
See ya.
Yeah.
An area that held a lot for me this month was folk metal, and surprise, surprise, most of it was from Finland. Fulcrum from Finland released the album Embers, which balances both folk and death metal, and Oak and Ashen Thorn from the US released Lost Future, which has like a heavy pagan sound and a great mix of both clean and kind of growling vocals. Varakalpa, who list themselves as Troll Beer Metal from Finland, released the album Tuomio, and it is just so fucking Finnish. There are some clear influences there from the likes of like Children of Bodom in that melodic death that sits at the core, but those folky layers and general aggression just make for something really kind of epic. For some more Finnish folk, Korpiklani dropped the album Rankarumpu, and this is exactly what you want from Korpiklani. It's high energy party folk that is just so much fun. It's really cool to see as well that they've been joined by ex-Turisas violinist Olli Vanska, which somehow I missed until I went across to watch some of their new video clips, but that was a nice surprise. And Concrete Age from the UK released the album Motherland, which is just mental. And honestly, I could have thrown this in pretty much any category I wanted to today, because their music spans like death, thrash, power, and folk, all in this really fast, energy-fueled package that is absolutely wonderful, and I've had playing on repeat. If we branch that out and take a bit of a look at thrash, Extinct from Germany released the album Incitement of Violence. Battle Creek, also from Germany, released Maze of the Mind. And Darkness, again from Germany, released Blood on Canvas. And from Italy, we had some really cool death thrash from Irreverence with the album Forsaken. The album flows really well with plenty of grit and a whole lot of groove. Really good one to check out. In the traditional space, there was just one I wanted to mention, and that was Accept with their new album Humanoid. This is another one that pretty much delivers what you expect from the band, at least for the most part. I'll preface this with, I fucking love Accept, and I love Mark's voice. And I've said this before, but when the Blood of the Nations album came out, that was just so perfectly heavy metal. It just encapsulated everything heavy metal. This album, Humanoid, I feel like it still captures that in tracks like Unbreakable, Diving into Sin, The Reckoning, and the title track, Humanoid. But it loses something in tracks like Man Up and Nobody Gets Out Alive. But then again, I also just think that type of message is a bit outdated, and maybe it just gave me a bit of the ick, and that put me off. Because, you know, empowering people, you can do this, you can pull through, you've got this, that's all good. But that whole man up, harden up thing, it's so old school, and we should just be progressing past it at this stage. Look, maybe part of that is my health and safety background. You know, part of my job is I deal with health, well-being, and mental health stuff. So when I hear people saying stuff like man up, harden up, I just want to go, shut up, that's not how it works. Anyway, maybe that's what put me off. Again, there's some really good tracks on this album, and I'll definitely be going back and listening to these. There's just a couple that let it down a little bit for me. Doom and stoner metal had a few goodies for us this month, including the Acid Machine from Brazil releasing the album Mushrooms, Typhus from Germany releasing their self-titled album, and Post Death Soundtrack from Canada dropping the album Veil Lifter. Acid Mammoth from Greece gave us the album Supersonic Megafauna Collision, an album that just gets progressively darker the further into the album you go. And Castle Rat from the US dropped their debut album Into the Realm, and it's fucking delicious. If this D&D nerd wasn't satisfied enough by all the folk offerings this past month, then this would just be that cherry on top. The theatrics that sit behind Castle Rat, with each member presenting their own characters, including the Rat Queen, the Druid, the Plague Doctor, the Count, and the Rat Reaperess, are just everything a fantasy nerd dreams of, with a Doom soundtrack sitting behind them. That, just to top it off, was recorded in an abandoned church. It's groovy, it's haunting, it's fun, it's just everything. In black metal, we had Hybrid Nightmares from Australia release the album Woeful Inertia. Grofa from Austria dropped the Blackened Death album Scordalis, and Adon from the US released their self-titled album. But another album that I've been absolutely smashing on repeat this past month is the self-titled debut album of the Finnish band Satanic North. With a modern take on black metal, we kind of have these shorter tracks, a shorter album length, and good production, but it's so unmistakably black metal and just so damn good. My reviews are very technical, by the way. So if I were to take from all of April's offerings and select a top 5, it would be, at number 5, Satanic North's self-titled album. 4, the Incantus self-titled album. 3, Benighted by Ekbom. 2, Concrete Age with Motherland. And my top pick for the month would be Castle Rat with Into the Realm. And if you have a look at that, that's 3 out of those 5 are all debut albums, which is pretty fucking cool. I'd love to know, what was your favourite release for April? Drop me a comment, shoot me a message through social media, or email me at sinandsteel@outlook.com to let me know. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to and share the podcast, and make sure to follow Sin and Steel on social media. Check out my Linktree to access playlists including songs from the episodes, and to be directed to the Sin and Steel Redbubble store for merchandise featuring artwork designed by me. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of What's New in Metal. I'm your host, Sarah-Tonin, and sinners, until next time, stay metal.